Any bats in the cave?
Yeah, you look terrible. I mean, you look great. Your face looks less fat.
Appreciate that.
All right, I'm ready.
All right, there we go. What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Team Morale Podcast. We do our three favorite things: talk a little bit of booze, a little bit of beer, and a whole lot of basketball. Ian the Tall Guy back with you again for yet another episode. And Mitch, we are more than excited to welcome a brand new member to Team Morale.
We love expanding the team. Anthony, Papa Doc, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to being here.
So
All right.
Anthony is one of my good friends from elementary school, longtime friends, and we grew up as big-time Blazer fans together.
Huge. The biggest, if you will.
So yeah, Anthony, why don't you give a little bio about yourself to our viewers, explain who you are a little bit.
All right. As Mitch said, I'm a Blazer fan, diehard, and I'm a Braves fan if you're watching this, and World Series, no big deal. So being a Blazer fan, I know what it's like to be sad a lot. So, just going through that, and that's a whole process. But looking forward to being here. I listen to the podcast every day, and me and Mitch talk about it pretty much every day and what they could do better. And he always asks for tips. So I'm pretty excited to be here. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm a mechanic, which isn't really that exciting. So
You're kind of like a secret producer for the podcast. I take a
I
lot
just
of
try to
ideas
help.
from you.
Yeah, I just like to help, that's why I'm here. It's like to help.
Yeah.
I wish Nurkic would help more, but
I know, right? But Anthony is in the Air Force, and we thought it'd be kind of fun to do a Veterans Day special with a guy that is in the military. So Anthony, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to expand team morale. Getting into what we're going to talk about on the podcast today, we are talking about the biggest weaknesses of every team in the Western Conference today. Next week, we'll do the Eastern Conference, but this week we are going to go down all 15 teams in the Western Conference and break down like what the biggest weaknesses is for each team.
Yep. In a stacked Western Conference, which is struggling a little bit this year, we're going to go through all of that. But before we do, we're jumping right into our whiskey of the day, which is good old fashioned number 7, Jack Daniels. I know this is a favorite for Anthony.
Oh yeah, being from Tennessee, this is like my jam. I only lived there for 7 years, but I don't know why. Even when I got older, it just kind of grew on me, so it stayed with me. Oh, it is.
All right, so a little history on Jack Daniels. It was originally created by Jasper Newton Daniel, more commonly known as Jack. He introduced the world to Old Number 7, his signature charcoal mellow Tennessee whiskey. And the reason that they actually named it Old Number 7 is because it took the gold medal at the World's Fair in St. Louis, Missouri, and it won its first of 7 straight gold medals, which is why they originally called it Old Number 7.
That's a humble brag.
It is a humble brag. Old Number 7, as in like we're just amazing.
We're just, old number 7. Nothing to see here. By the way, we've won it like 7 years in a row, so subtle flex.
But yeah, Jack Daniels has survived through prohibitions, and then eventually, once they re-ratified the amendment to bring booze back into the world, then they really blew up because they're such like a mellow, smooth kind of whiskey.
Yeah, we'll break down the taste a little bit later. And Anthony, I gotta ask, are you drinking it out of a coffee mug?
So let me explain, right? So when I lived in Korea, right, I worked on U2s, like the spy plane from Call of Duty, the big long one. And it's my favorite mug. And I always drink whiskey from my favorite mug because it has like our logo on it and then a U2. And yes, I drink it from a mug. Don't judge me, okay? don't judge me. I feel better and warmer on an app. It's 10:30 and I'm drinking Jack Daniels, so I'm gonna drink it from a mug and pretend it's coffee and just vibe.
Are you doing the Jack and Coke or are you doing straight Jack?
So I decided to go with just straight Jack because I know you guys like talking about taste, so I decided to go. I was like, I guess I'll just get rid of my Coke and just go straight taste.
Go straight for the Jack.
Just go straight for it, dude.
It's good here in the afternoon of Veterans Day.
Yeah, just it's like, how you doing? But I'm good now. My insides are warm.
All right, so we've talked about the whiskey. Let's jump into what we're going to talk about next, which is our news and notes. Wow, hold on. This is it.
There you go.
There it is. All right, so we've talked about the whiskey. Let's jump into what we're going to talk about next on the podcast, which is our news and notes. We brought it up the last podcast. It's a new thing that we're trying out here. Just a little bit of, what's going on around the NBA, the recent haps about it. And we've got 3 things that we're going to talk about today. The first one being a new trade rumor. The Ben Simmons saga is heated up, and there's a trade rumor going on around for Ben Simmons to be traded for Jaylen Brown. There are a couple other pieces that might need to be in the mix to make the contracts work, but that the crux of the deal would be Ben Simmons for Jaylen Brown.
I heard something along the lines of the Sixers were like, we'll give you Danny Green and Ben Simmons, but we want Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, and like a first or 2.
Yeah, they're
just dumb.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. Apparently they called him and was like, hey, these are who we want. They asked for those 2 guys and they're like, no. And they hung up. They didn't say anything. They just hung up the phone. They're like, you're kidding.
Fuck off, dude.
He's like, I don't want Ben Simmons. And it's just not going to happen, dude. It's not going to happen. You're not going to give up Marcus Smart for a struggling defensive team to be like, hey, we're going to give up one of our best defenders. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, let alone Jaylen Brown having probably the best start of any season of anybody in the league right now, as well as, being one of the best young players in the NBA. To give him up for Ben Simmons, who is not even playing basketball right now and is just, being a locker room cancer. It was a crazy idea, and the where there's smoke, there's fire. So there's definitely something going on there, but I would be shocked if a deal got done.
It's just funny to me. Is like, obviously the Celtics are trying to do something to fix their problems right now. And that's probably going to move on from Jaylen Brown. So it's like, what can you get for Jaylen Brown? Ben Simmons is good, but he's a total cancer right now. And you should not be giving up more assets to get Ben Simmons. You should be getting Ben Simmons and other stuff from the Sixers, which I'm sure is where like the stalemate is going to end up.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to our next piece of information here, which would be Michael Porter Jr., who has struggled mightily to start this year, goes down with an injury and is out indefinitely.
The scary thing about this is it's the back injury. So when he got drafted, he had the back injury all year when he was at Missouri, and he didn't play all season. And then when he was going through the draft combine, he got red flagged by a lot of different medical staffs because of the back thing. And it was like a small back tweak, and they're saying it's indefinite. They don't know when he's actually going to come back. That's the thing with backs.
Yeah, I don't know, man. For Michael Porter Jr., you guys have even talked about on the podcast, is like, he could be a complete game changer, or if he starts getting in his head and starts getting emotional, he's gonna, he could really bring down the team. So actually, kind of a hot take, I think that this isn't necessarily a terrible thing for the team. It just sucks for him, but if he goes down, I think the team could build around the next guy up. And because he's been struggling, I don't think it's going to affect him as much as people think.
That's a good point.
The Nuggets should be afraid a little bit because they just paid the man.
Yeah,
they just gave
that's
him
true. Yeah, that's a good
the rookie
point. Yeah.
supermax. He's getting the same amount of money as Luka and Trey. And if he's, going to be struggling with some back issues and not playing a lot of games, timing could not have been worse if you're the Nuggets front office right now.
Yeah, they're going to be shitting themselves. It's mainly because of the money, but you're right, Anthony. It could be an addition by subtraction thing.
Yeah, transferring from one injury to another, though, a little bit of happy news. Klay Thompson is ahead of schedule in his Achilles injury and could be back before Christmas.
That would be big. Our Warriors are obviously already balling out, but once they get Klay, they might actually be like genuine championship contenders, which I didn't think they'd be.
Yeah, the Warriors are definitely a team that going in that we were just like, we don't know what they are. They could either be, the championship contenders of old, or they could be, a team that's fighting for, the home court of playoffs, or even a team fighting for the play-in. And so they've come out and showed everyone that they are not to be taken lightly. And if once they get Klay back, it could be all over.
Yeah. And when you look at what Klay said the other day after the top 75 list came out, and he was like pissed that he wasn't on it, I think that has something to do with him coming back. Like, I know he was ahead of schedule and he's like doing better and better, and that's ultimately it. But the confidence he has now going into the season is terrifying, because now he's going in thinking, I need to kill. I need to do well to prove to people that I'm better than people who are on that list. Like, some people say Damian Lillard, like he should have been there over Dame, and he thinks that.
Dude,
he should have been there over a lot. So.
I was looking at there was a list that came out of like all the Warriors that had been on the top 75 list. And there was probably like 5 or 6 guys on that list, like all the way from like Paul Reason, who's super old, Nate Thurman, like Rick Barry. There's a lot of guys that are on that list. Is like, I don't know if they should be on that list over Klay Thompson, just like on the Warriors franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. December 20th is the day that they're saying he could be back as soon as December 20th. So mark that day on your calendars. I'm sure
excited.
if he comes back, the return of Klay will get a primetime game. They'll do whatever they need to do to get Klay in front of the bright lights the day he comes back. But that exhausts our news and notes. Those are our 3 talking points of what happened in the last week of the NBA. Let's break into these biggest problems that each team in the Western Conference is facing. We're going to basically work our way up the standings right now, meaning we're starting with the worst team in the West right now, which would be the New Orleans Pelicans.
Oh yeah. And the Pelicans, boy, do they have more than one weakness. The Pelicans are basically kind of like Ethan said, I think it was the last podcast, they're a fire sale team. Like at this point, they're kind of like, what is the only positives we really have, right? So the only positives you have are like Valanciunas and Ingram, who are the like only good pieces. But Zion, can't stop eating cake. He's 387 pounds. The dude can't stay healthy. He's always hurt. And if I had to choose one actual weakness, it is their lack of discipline on defense. So when I watch them play, they have guys that could be very good on defense and they can really step up if they need to. But they're 24th in defense right now. They're struggling. And without Zion there right now, he's kind of like the guy that, oh my gosh, he plays just like young Charles Barkley. Oh my God, he's the same body type and everything. But then you look at him play and you're like, yeah, he'll play okay defense. He'll go down the floor. He'll get the ball and make a layup. There's a reason he shoots like 60+%. It's because all he's doing is dunking or making layups. He's not shooting. But even if Zion comes back, I don't think this team, to be honest, I don't know if they win 30 games this year. This team is struggling mightily. They've lost to everyone. I mean, they have one win, so that's exciting.
Yeah,
but
they're 1-11, and they recently, their last game, they lost by 8 to the Thunder, who we'll get to them, but are basically a G League team right now. So the Pelicans are an absolute dumpster fire. I said it on the last podcast. They are a team that should be shopping anybody and everybody, especially, when Zion has come out and said that he doesn't want to play for the Pelicans. Who wants to play for the Pelicans right now? They are a mess.
Nobody, especially since like everything is a mess. Everything up to like the ownership is like potentially going to like move the team. And it's tough when your defense sucks really bad and that's your biggest weakness, and you're definitely not outscoring teams. You know what I mean? It's like if that's what you're relying on, like you're basically screwed. That team is in a long season. This is gonna be a tough season for the New Orleans Pelicans.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this team, like Anthony said, I would be surprised if they crack 20, 25 wins.
Yeah,
this is a team I don't know if they get rough. 20 wins. That being said, they are missing Zion. They are missing Brandon Ingram, who hasn't played in a little while. Valanciunas has been a bright spot for them. He is a guy that is kind of beasting. I mean, averaging 20 points, 14 rebounds while shooting 45% from 3.
Someone's got to
score. That's wild to me.
If you look, it's pretty funny. The Pelicans are 11th in rebounding. So they're 24th in defense, but Valanciunas is like, don't worry, guys. I got us. We'll get at least one bright stat and I'll just get rebounds and, shoot some threes. And everyone else on the team's like, cool. So there's 20 points. How we getting the rest?
Whose turn is
like
it now?
They can't score. Yeah.
Yeah. That team is a mess. Let's move on to our next team here, which would be the 1-10 Houston Rockets. They are 14th in the West. Another dumpster fire of a team, but this team at least is young and has some, up and coming stars. Jalen Green, the number 2 pick in the draft. My biggest weakness for them right now is the fact that Jalen Green there's inefficient and then there's Jalen Green inefficient. He is shooting 35% from the field and 28% from 3.
All round up.
Averaging 14 points a game and averaging almost 3 turnovers. There is rookie inefficiency, and then there's this. This is a next level inefficient.
I mean, they're just in the spot where it's like give Jalen Green the keys to the car, and hopefully he doesn't drive it into a tree, sort of thing. And
he's getting dangerously close.
He's getting dangerously close to the guardrails. The thing about Jalen Green though is that I think he kind of needs this because he needs to be the alpha. He needs to be like the main guy on the team, and he'll eventually grow into it. But the massive inefficiency is definitely an issue for the Rockets because he is your whole team right now.
Yeah. The Rockets are another team that I could see just selling assets pretty soon here. Christian Wood averaging, 18 points, 11 rebounds while shooting 38% from
Wood's been
three as a
good,
big man. Wood's been good. Eric Gordon's been all right. He's been efficient at least. He might not be scoring at the normal thing, but he's shooting 51% from three on 5 attempts a game. So, not bad.
Wow.
David Nwaba can contribute. Daniel House can contribute to teams. So this is another young team that I think is giving their keys to their young guys. And right now it's not working. Clearly they're 1-10. There's a difference between like having their young guys and like, being bad, but like being competitive. The Rockets aren't really competitive right now.
No. And I mean, didn't Jalen Green have like 2 really good games and then the rest was just like, what's happening?
Yeah.
Like,
Basically. And then last night, it was the big 1-2 matchup. It was the big Cade Cunningham versus Jalen Green matchup last night. And Jalen Green put up a decent stat line. I believe it was like 23 points, something like that. But Cade Cunningham, I was watching the game. Cade Cunningham looks like he has much more of like an awareness of the floor. He he kind of knows what's going on around the game. He can like kind of play around his teammates a little more, where Jalen Green is like very much going out and trying to get the ball and trying to make everything about him.
Yeah, he's definitely going 1-on-5 a lot. Let's move on to our next team here, which would be the Minnesota Timberwolves, struggling yet again.
The Timber Pumps.
This team has always had decent talent, and they find a way to fuck it up every time. And so the Timberwolves, again, are in absolute just, dumpster fire territory. They are 3-7, 13th in the West. They just lost by 13 to the Warriors. They are another team that's a mess.
Yeah, if you look at their starting 5, right? You look at this talent, I don't understand why they're as bad as they are. You've got Pat Bev, who everyone's seen. Pat Bev is just a nuisance. He's the perfect get in your head guy. You have D'Angelo Russell, who's been an all-star. Anthony Edwards, who arguably was the number 2 best rookie last year. Some people think he was number 1 because LaMelo got hurt. I won't do this. I won't bring up LaMelo. I'm not going to do that because I don't like him either, but I'm not going to bring it up.
A fellow hater.
A fellow hater. But Jordan McDaniels I think he could be really good in the future, but Cat wants out. In my opinion, Cat wants out. He's still Karl Anthony Towns, but so I'm not going to go with the normal. Their defense, yes, they're 30th. They're rebounding, they're 30th. They get out rebounded by everyone. They're 46% of the time they get a rebound. So they get out rebounded every single game. And
out rebounded by a flip of a coin.
Pretty much.
That's tough. That's tough when you have one of the best big men in the league and get out rebounded.
Cat is averaging 9.8 rebounds a game, which is not bad, but the next closest is 6.
Yeah, and if you look, I think it's team leadership is their weakness. They have no one on that team who is a leader. Like Pat Bev, he is a great asset to have, but he's not a guy you're going to be like, yeah, let's give him the keys and have him be the leader of the team. That's not going to happen. Like Karl Anthony Towns, like I said, probably wants out. He's been there too long. They keep paying him, so that's cool. But he's going nowhere. They start out for the first couple games. They're always like, man, this is our year. We got another 3 wins. And then, 10 games later, they're like, all right, we still have those 3 wins. Let's figure it out, So they're everything is bad. They have 15.2 second chance points allowed a game. They allow 15 second chance points, which is tied for 3rd, I think, in the league. So they're allowing everyone to out rebound them, and not only out rebound them, but score because they have the worst defense too. So it's a big mess for the Timberwolves.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the lack of leadership. I think that's been the issue for them for a long time. Even when they had Jimmy Butler was like trying to be the leader, but they like weren't really buying in.
No.
D'Lo has had his own issues in the past. Cat is known as soft. Anthony Edwards, a bit of a knucklehead kind of guy, but they have a ton of talent. I mean, Anthony Edwards had 48, 5-5 last night against the Warriors.
Yeah. This team is not untalented.
No,
talent is not the issue here. It is, like you guys said, leadership. It's a little bit of grit and grind. It's a little bit of professionalism. This team is just not full of professionals, which makes me so happy that Patrick Beverley is wasting away up in Minnesota. That just warms my soul a little bit, knowing that Pat Bev is just wasting and being irrelevant. But they do have some good bones here. Anthony Edwards. Cat, crazy enough, is only 26.
Yeah.
So that's wild. So
God, it seems like he's been in the league forever, dude.
I know.
Like, That's so weird.
He needs to move, but I don't think they'll move him.
A change of scenery is definitely something that's needed, but Cat, D'Lo, Anthony Edwards, that's a good big three. That's probably top 5 big three in the West in terms of just raw talent, but they just can't put the pieces together to win, which is just, it's a bit of a bummer. But let's move on here to our next team, which would be the San Antonio Spurs. Greg Popovich not riding off into the sunset like everyone kind of thought he would. But the Spurs are 4-7. They are 12th in the Western Conference. They just won a game against Sacramento by, math is hard, 136 to 117. I'm going to say that. But this team and their biggest weakness so far is this might be the worst big man rotation in the NBA. This big man rotation is kind of gross. They start Jakob Poeltl, who's not bad. Jakob Poeltl's been playing okay. I would say he's meh is what I would put it as. He averages 13 points and 9 rebounds a game, which is not bad for your starting center. But their backup center is Drew Eubanks, who I've never heard of, but he averages 6 points, 4 rebounds, and he is 6'9".
Yeah, but you just wait till Zach Collins comes back.
Come on, Zach.
In 1 decade from now, Zach Collins will play his first game in 10 years, and he'll finally be good.
He's going to have 1.2 rebounds. It's coming in.
Honestly, he's like the hope for what they need at their big men. Because, yes, you're right. The big men are very meh.
They don't, I would say Jakob Poeltl is a good backup big man, and Drew Eubanks shouldn't be playing.
Yeah.
That is kind of what, but Drew Eubanks plays a lot. I mean, he plays, let's see, like 20 minutes a game.
Wow.
So it's
bad.
It's not what you want when it comes to your big man rotation, and it's taking their toll on the team. Again, they are 4-7. They have lost a couple of close games, but overall they have lost a lot of blowouts as well. And their total rebounding, they're 24th in the NBA in total rebounding.
Jesus.
Yeah, I agree with you there because they got like good young talent at the guards and the wings, right? It's like they got DeJounte Murray, they got Lonnie Walker, they got Derek White, they got Devin Vassell, they got Keldon Johnson. They got a lot of like decent talent in all the other areas, but their big men are weak as fuck.
Yeah, if Poeltl was a backup somewhere, I think he'd be awesome because I mean, getting 9 rebounds a game, given he's playing the whole game and he's only getting 9 rebounds, but so is Karl Anthony Towns. So take that as you will. So.
Yeah. He reminds me as like your prototypical backup big.
Yeah, he's exactly what you want. Playing 15 to 20 minutes off the bench, and then you have your starter. But he is their guy. He's also like a big part of their team and a big part of their offense, which is probably not what you want. So, yeah, the Spurs. They're another team where I don't know if they'll be sellers or buyers at the deadline, which is a ways away. We've got some time, but they want to be competitive with Pop at the end of Pop's tenure as their head coach, because Pop's not going to be around forever. You want to be competitive. You want to, give Pop that fairy tale ending that the man definitely deserves. And this big man rotation is not it.
No, I don't know if they'll get there with Pop. I think Pop is just going to kind of usher in the new generation, and then maybe they'll be good when the new coach comes in.
He should have ended with the gold medal.
Yeah, that's my guess. I'm going to move us along here. I'm taking narrator job. We are going to move on to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, as we all know, have a horde of draft picks, a lot of young guys, not many vets. What's their weakness?
So the Thunder are 4-6, 11th in the Western Conference, which only 2 games below 500 for the Thunder. I feel like is not terrible. 4-6. They have 2 like 20-point comebacks against the Lakers, which is fun.
Which is amazing. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Half your wins come against the Lakers. I love it.
My biggest problem with them is if you take out Shea, maybe Josh Giddey, and maybe Lou Gwen's Dort, this is a G League team.
It's pretty close.
This is a G League
pretty
team.
Close, dude.
I mean, they are...
Put some respect on Poku's name.
So they have Derek Favors, who's played in the NBA for 11 years. They have Mike Muscala, who's played in the NBA for 8 years. And then their next oldest player is Shea, who's been in the league for 3 years.
Oh, man.
And then they have like 5 guys who have been in the league for 2 years, 2 guys that have been in the league for 1 year, and then like 6 rookies. This is a G League team.
So that's the weakness, is that it's a G League team?
This team is young. I mean, this team is just so young. They don't really know how to play NBA basketball yet. A lot of their guys are still getting their feet wet in the NBA. A lot of their guys, you can tell when you watch them play, are just like, oh, I'm in the NBA.
Just happy
this
to be
is
there.
awesome
Yeah.
type of thing, as opposed to like, all right, I'm in the NBA. This is my job. Let's go get shit done. This is a team that is still like in the awe of playing a regular season basketball game.
The wide-eyed, bushy-tailed guys.
Yeah.
Who's their coach right now?
Their coach.
It's Mike Dignault.
Yes. Who is
So do you
honestly
think-
done a good job with this. Again, 2 games below 500 is not bad given the talent on this roster. But yeah, they're still 11th in the West.
Do you think they need like a more like a players coach because they're all so young and they're very inexperienced? Do you think that would help them more if they had someone on their coaching staff that would do that?
So Ethan and I actually get to work a lot of these. Like we work for Bally's Southwest, so we work a lot of Spurs, Mavs, Thunder, and Pelicans games. And we've watched a decent amount of the Thunder. And from what I've gotten from all of the interviews and everything with Dignault, it's his first head coaching job. So he's also kind of learning on the fly, just like the rest of this team. But he has been really funny, gregarious. Like he's been very like affable. He's been really like well spoken. It seems like all the players really like him. He jokes around. Like he seems like a key to me. I think like you're on the same track. Seems like a player's coach.
I would say
Yeah.
the word I would use to describe him is positive.
Yeah.
He finds a way,
good.
like they could get blown out by 20 and he finds a way to spin it, at least in terms of like figuring out how to talk to the media. He finds a way to spin it into something positive, which is big for a team that is, full of so many young guys. You don't want to come into the NBA, get lost, lose by 30, and then just get beat down. So like finding positive, I think he knows that this team is not anywhere close to being a playoff team. I don't think we're fooling anybody with that, but I think he just does a good job of finding a way to take positives from this young roster. Let's move along here to our next team, which is, hold on, my app is loading.
The Blazers.
Oh, okay, the Blazers are next. Of course, the Blazers are
I'm
next.
just gonna help you
Let's
out
move
here.
on to the
Just gotta-
Blazers, who
Man,
are
that's sad.
10th in the West. What are they? 5 and
5 and
7,
7.
which is not what you wanted in Chauncey Billups to start as a coach.
No, it is
No.
not. And
Anthony,
I mean,
take it.
so I was at the game last night, drove a couple hours, got real sad. So I think their biggest weakness right now is more of a coming to Jesus moment, right? Is they're realizing right now that they're not just going to have the same system they've had for the last 8 years. They need to figure out how they can work with a new coach in a brand new system and like 4 new guys that are not just like, oh, hey, these guys are going to get 5 minutes here. They have 4 or 5 new guys that are integral pieces to their team, and they don't have any direction. They go out there, and when you watch them play, it is just sad because they're all over the place. They like last night they ran into each other, and that made me mad. Like they went for a rebound, and Larry Nance and Anthony Simons literally just and they hit each other.
Yeah.
Didn't get the rebound, and Frank Kaminsky, who had the best game of his life, got a rebound over both of them and just laid it up like they weren't even there. And Larry Nance, who statistically has been super good at defense, got the craziest long arms you've ever seen. This guy is getting bodied by everyone this year because they're trying to learn a new system. So their biggest weakness right now, honestly, I'm going to kind of throw it towards Chauncey, is coaching. And it's because he's not coaching them in the right directions. Now, I love his systems that he has in place, but they don't have any direction. And it sucks because I'm a huge Chauncey fan, and Dame is also a big weakness. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not saying that. He got 28 last night on 56% shooting. So screw everyone who says it's Dame. It's not Dame.
I was about to say I'm surprised it wasn't Dame because
No.
the
I mean,
the free Dame chants were loud and clear everywhere else they've been playing.
I mean, everyone's even Charles Barkley's like, hey, Dame needs to go. Dame needs to go somewhere else and try something new. But if you look, Dame still has 4 or 5 20-point games. And last night on 56% shooting, he's like, okay, I'm not making my threes. Went 1 for 4 for threes. He's like, that's not happening right now. So he still made 28 points just shooting mid-range. Like it was the easiest thing in the world. Like it was a free throw. So I don't think that's the issue. I think it's CJ shooting like 5 for 19 2 games in a row, or Anthony Simons can't make a bucket right now. But I think it's the direction, and they just look jumbled, and the coaching needs to tighten up a lot because Chauncey gets mad and he yells at him. And I don't think Dame was like used to that. Like he gets in their ass, and I like that. So we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, you and me could sit here and talk Blazers all
All day.
day. I'll throw my little 2 cents out here. Dame has obviously struggled, and I'm not totally sure what's going on with him. It could be a myriad of issues. Chauncey could be the issue because he is just kind of learning how to be a head coach right now. But overall, it's still defense. And you're right. We don't have a lot of direction right now. We gotta right the ship. We gotta start coming together as a unit. There's a lot of pieces that look good out there and have good flashes, but have not really come together for a whole game. My biggest weakness for them is they can't win on the road. They currently are winless on the road. You got to get a couple.
Yeah, that is a thing. That's a weird stat that they're 0-6 on the road, which is just a bummer. That's just
it means they're 5-1 at home though.
Yes,
Hey,
we're killing it at home. Amazing,
great home team. Yeah.
But so the Blazers, not the start that they wanted, but it's early. You're only 12 games in. Mitch has been a big proponent, and he said it on the podcast that you don't judge a team until they played about 20 games. So
20 games or 10 games under 500.
So you've got 8 games before you can start to panic over here, boys.
Exactly.
I mean, I am just going to say they're number 8 in defense in the league right now, according to NBA's website.
Wow.
So
like a defensive rating. Good for us.
Yeah. So their defensive rating.
It's almost like we should win more.
Yeah. I mean, them not shooting well. Them making 3 threes out of 17 last night. Really, you're not going to win many games.
You only shot 17 threes.
Well, when you weren't we started off like 0 for 13.
0 for 13 in the first half.
So I think they were just like,
we're
done shooting threes. And then Kaminsky went off for 31. It was a sad night.
Anyways, let's move on to our next team here. We've got the 5-7 Sacramento Kings, who are actually a bit of I would say positive surprise. They are only 2 games below 500. They have lost 3 in a row. So they were above 500 at some point. But I'm going to go on this team, and I'm going to say that their biggest problem right now is they have a clog in the backcourt. They have 4 guys that need minutes, the ball, scoring opportunities, and those 4 being De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Davion Mitchell. All 4 of those guys need minutes, the ball, and there's not enough space to go around. So this is a team that I would be, putting on trade watch because someone's got to go. You can deal with 3, but you can't have all 4 of them, and it leads to like clunkiness on the offense.
Yeah, the bright spot on their team is Harrison Barnes, who's averaging 21 a game and shooting 42% from 3 and shooting like 8 threes a game.
HB, I love you.
Harrison Barnes has been an absolute baller, but you're right. When your best young talent is all guards, you got to start figuring out a way to even out your roster. And going back to the Blazers, they had Dame and CJ early, and it just rode with Dame and CJ, and it's almost like it should have been like we should have moved on from that earlier on. And so if they were smart, they should learn from that and move on from that.
Yeah, I mean, all the guys, the guys that I mentioned aren't playing well. Like De'Aaron Fox averaging 20 a game, Tyrese Halliburton 13, Buddy Hield 16, Davion Mitchell 10 in his rookie season, and none of them are shooting all that poorly. I mean, Fox 41% from the field. He is struggling from 3 at 22%, but Halliburton 48%, Buddy Hield shooting 39 from 3, Davion Mitchell in his rookie year shooting 40% from the field. So it's not like these guys are struggling mightily, but they just need more opportunities. Especially, I would say Halliburton and Mitchell Halliburton needs to shoot more than 11 times a game. Mitchell needs to shoot more than 10 times a game. These guys need more shots. And you don't know where these shots. You got to lose shots from somebody to get shots for these other guys.
Dude, the weirdest thing to me about the Kings is the Marvin Bagley, we're just not going to play him.
Why? I don't get
it. We're not going
it.
to trade you, but we're not going to play you.
He has
don't get it.
He has appeared in 1 game so far this year, which is that's just the biggest middle finger to a guy. Like, we're not even going to let you up your trade value so that we can ship you off somewhere. We're just going to let you rot away in Sacramento.
Yeah.
I just don't get it, man, because he has so much upside. And they just will not play him. Even last year when they really started struggling, me and Mitchell had talked about this. They were struggling. They're like, all right, now it's Bagley's time. He's coming in. Nope. Not even a minute.
Not even get a shot.
Yeah. When they were terrible, he still sat on the bench and didn't play a minute in so many games. I was like, I think he has a lot of upside, but that's just my opinion. So.
All right. Let's move on here. We'll do one more team and then we'll take a break and talk taste.
Okay.
The next team we're going to talk about are the 6-5 Memphis Grizzlies. They are 8th in the Western Conference. So they would be the first team in the playoff. Well, I guess the Blazers and the Kings would be in the bubble or the play-in tournament, but the King or the Grizzlies would be in that,
that
playoff.
next section.
area type thing, I guess.
Okay. The Memphis Grizzlies are a very, very good growing team. Ja Morant is currently in like the top 5 of MVP power rankings. Their defensive rating is where they kind of like really fall off. They're 27th in their defensive rating. But the thing that I would say is their biggest weakness is closing out games. They're young. They're learning how to be good, how to be great. Ja is absolutely balling out. The rest of their team, if they don't have a whole lot of holes, Dylan Brooks just came back for the first time last night, and he came off the bench, but he looked good. But they have good defenders, they have good shooters, they have good creators. It's just meshing and being able to finish out the games and close those games out. Even going back to earlier this season when Ja missed 2 free throws, I believe it was in LA.
Oh man,
free throws, and they end up losing that game. Like you got to close that. Like you got it. Like you've got to be able to push through, make those free throws, and close that game. That is the biggest hurdle they're going to go through.
Yeah, this team is probably, I would say, the most loved team in the NBA. No NBA fan hates the Grizzlies.
No.
Like everyone's just like, the Grizzlies, they're fun. But they remind me of what the Mavericks were 2 years ago, which was Luka's second season, and they lost like 20 or 25 quote clutch games, which are games within under 5 minutes within 5 points. And the Mavs like broke the NBA record for most clutch losses in a season. But this Grizzlies team is kind of in the same area where they're young, they're figuring out, and learning to win in clutch situations isn't luck. It isn't necessarily skill. It's like it's something you need to learn.
It's an experience.
Absolutely.
It comes with experience. It sometimes comes down to luck, but it's a skill that you need to learn. You don't just walk in and be like, oh, I was good in college, and then walk in and just start winning clutch NBA games. It's different. The pressure ratchets up, the defense ratchets up, the play, especially the officiating changes in that last 5 minutes. So you got to learn how to play in that. And this is just some growing pains of a young team.
I mean, look at Triple J though. Triple J is one of those pieces that to me is still kind of a mystery because he could be the turntable for this team to make them. If he lives up to his potential, they could be a championship contender in my eyes. They have that ability. But if Triple J keeps kind of being wishy-washy and kind of inconsistent at times, but I mean, it's not his fault he gets hurt all the time. But if he stays injury prone or he stays inconsistent, this team will struggle unless they maybe have to move on from him in the future. That could be their one either bright spot or the dark spot on this team in the future, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. Jaren is definitely an enigma. But Bane is the guy who I think is going to be their number 2 guy. Dude, Bane is balling.
Yes, Desmond Bane out of TCU. We got to shout him out.
Don't
couple
always
of horn
have
frogs
to.
here on this podcast, so we always shout
Good
out
for you guys.
our fellow frogs. But let's take a break here. Let's jump into this whiskey as we always do. Let's talk taste. Do you have the tasting notes?
I do have the tasting notes.
Ready to go here.
I do.
I mean, Anthony, you've tasted this a lot. So what do you get taste wise out of it?
It's just for me, it depends because obviously Jack has so many different types. Right? Like single barrel is my favorite, but I mean, I'm not spending money on single barrel every time I drink. That's just not going to happen. But when you drink this, it's actually pretty smooth for a cheap whiskey. Like it's pretty cheap and you can drink it with really no problems, but you do get, or me, I get a little spice off the first taste. Like you get that like really smoky and spicy taste right when you taste it. So it like kind of lingers on your lips and you get to taste it for a little while, where I don't get that with a lot of whiskeys. So I really like it.
Yeah. Last podcast, we had Tito's handmade vodka on, and I would kind of say that this was like in that same echelon as Tito's. It's like, it's not super nice, fancy, and it's not bad, like bottom of the barrel. It's like that perfect, like middle point whiskey, kind of like Tito's is the perfect middle point vodka. In terms of taste, you definitely get a little bit of smokiness. You definitely get a little bit of spice. There's a little bit of like caramel in there a little bit.
Yep.
And then there's also this little bit of like brown sugary nuttiness to it that I get.
Yeah, the big thing that pops out to me is the caramel and the vanilla, which we say a million times, but with Jack, it's definitely more of a thing than other whiskeys. Like the thing that Jack is most famous for is it's your mixer whiskey, right? It's like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you got your Jack and Coke, you got your Sprite and Coke, or your Sprite and Coke.
It's a terrible mix.
Your Sprite and Jack. So it's known to be a more sugary, a sweeter kind of whiskey, and so that's the stuff that I get. But here's what our professionals at Whiskey of the Week say. First of all, The nose, if you sniff it, is quite sweet with some honey, vanilla, and tasted oak with a hint of smoke. Also, dried
Smoky.
fruit and marzipan. Do you know
Ooh.
what marzipan is?
Do you know what marzipan
Of
is?
course, I know what marzipan is. I'm not an idiot. Anyways, the palate is smoky, oaky, and butterscotch sweetness. So I read the butterscotch thing and I was drinking it, and I was like, okay, I actually do get a
So
lot of the
that's the brown
butterscotch.
sugar.
That's the kind of that
Okay.
sugary thing that you're
I was
getting.
close.
Yes.
Ooh.
There's a hint of sour cherries and cereal.
No, there's not.
I'm not
Like
getting any.
Lucky Charms,
I'm not
or
getting any frosted.
Yeah.
there's a million different types of cereal, like
Yeah.
Honey
I
Nut
taste no
Cheerio,
frosted flakes.
Life,
No.
Lucky Charms. Tricks are for kids.
Bits of fruit and loads of vanilla. It is quite an oily whiskey. Oily, that's gross. And has a full body. Is a very mellow and smooth whiskey. So this whiskey, like Jack specifically, is supposed to be the smooth, sweet, easy drinking stuff.
I hear you read that, and I immediately go back to like this whiskey is made to be mixed.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it is does a good job of like having undertones of flavor so that when it's mixed with something, you can still taste it's there while not being overpowering.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys have had a lot of really good whiskeys on the show, and I mean, you've also had some, hey, we're in college, we're gonna drink a little bit, type of drinks. But for as far as like a mixing drink goes, you don't get a lot of whiskeys where you want to mix it. You don't want to, because you want to taste the whiskey and you want to, like the higher end ones. If you, especially your dad, Mitchell, if you mixed any whiskey around your dad, he's gonna be like, "Excuse me, what are you doing?" You get one ice cube.
If I brought like Johnny Walker Blue and mix it as like scotch
Oh,
and soda,
man.
he'd like stab me in the neck. Like, what are you doing?
Mr. Davis,
Yeah.
put the
And-
knife
and
away,
you
sir.
And this whiskey, Ethan, you can have as many ice cubes as you want. It's fine. Like you can mix it with anything. It's fine. It's fine.
Well, it's the long lost brother of Tennessee Honey, who recently was passed in terms of my hierarchy list, but still near and dear to my heart.
But yes, thank you for joining
good,
us,
dude.
Jack Daniels, old number
Oh,
7.
yeah.
Always a classic, always a good one. Our second iteration of Jack Daniels on
Yes.
the pod.
A reoccurring friend of the podcast, Mr. Jack. Let's jump back into these teams. We've got a fan favorite here, and by that I say it sarcastically. We have the Los Angeles Lakers, who are 7-5.
Ooh.
They started about as slow as they probably could have, but are 7-5, 7th in the West. They've won 2 in a row. They are up and coming. They're kind of slowly figuring this team out. This was a team that needed some time to get the pieces together, and it looks like they're starting to fall a little bit.
Anthony, I'm going to toss this one to you. What do you think?
I think it's a bummer that they're starting to figure it out. I'm gonna throw that out there. No one in the league wants to see them figure it out unless you're a Laker fan. Everyone else wants to see them fail, but everyone wants to say it's their shooting is like their biggest flaw, because they do have a lot of issues where, I mean, Westbrook, come on, the man had an air bank.
Oh,
Yeah,
Westbrook.
we saw the air bank.
Westbrook.
That was one of the worst shots I've
yeah.
ever seen.
You don't get it because
Yeah.
he shoots bricks. You know?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
joke. It's a play on words. It's a pun.
I get it.
But if you look at, like, for me, I'm going kind of off kilter. So I think it's the age and injury is their weakness. So if you look at the team, right? So Russ and Avery Bradley and AD are not more than 32, right? They're 28 to 32. But then you look at the retirement Lakers and you have like LeBron is 36, and LeBron is obviously showing he's injured already. Last year, he ended the year getting injured, and everyone was like, we'll see. He gets
Only
healthy,
played
he got
6
injured
games.
again. Yeah. And then if you look at the year before their championship year, he got hurt that year too. Look at the year before, he got hurt. So he's starting to get hurt, which is kind of worrisome if you're a Laker fan. And then you got Melo coming off the bench, who's about 107. And, he's shooting the best for this team, and he's 37 years old. And Melo was shooting, I know through the first like 7 games, he was shooting like 50%.
He is exactly
So-
50% from 3 right now.
I mean, shooting the best for the
Unbelievable.
team is, it's hard to shoot better than 50%. So I'm not surprised that he's shooting best on the team. If he wasn't, I'd be like, who the hell is shooting better?
Hold on. Dwight Howard is 100% from 3 right now.
What is he, 1
He's
for
1
1?
for 1.
Yeah, dude.
Heroes wear capes.
But that's the thing, dude. Look at Dwight Howard. He's 35. Wayne Ellington's 33. But Trevor Ariza, I didn't even know Ariza was on the team, and he's 36 years old. So they have 4 guys that are 36.
36 plus, yeah.
Yeah,
That
this
is
team is old.
unbelievable.
This team is old. but this team is, I would say, deep in that they have a bunch of guys with experience that, especially playing like contributing minute. They don't have like their end of their bench is not a bunch of young guys who like are still like figuring out the NBA. The end of their bench are guys that are like, you could plug in and be like, hey, strap it up, give me one game, put the walker down and give me one game.
Come on, Wayne Ellington, give me one good game here.
So that is
just one.
That is the area of like optimism. But yes, this team is old and they are one injury from LeBron or AD away from just being like out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And Melo struggles too with injuries. Melo gets hurt at least once a year. So
going into the season, my big con for them was going to be shooting, and they are currently 6th in the NBA in 3-point percentage. So if they can figure that out, I'm with you. Age and injuries will probably be the thing that plagues them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on here to our next team, which is the other LA team. We're staying in the LA market, which might be one of the hottest teams in the NBA right now. They're winners of 5 straight and are 6-4, the Los Angeles Clippers.
Yeah, the Los Angeles Clippers. They started off really tough. And they've been balling since. Paul George is in MVP kind of category right now if they continue to win. The thing that I think is going to be their biggest weakness going forward is their big men. Zubac is a solid big man, but I would put him as a bottom 5 starting big man in the NBA.
I'd put him right next to Jakob Poeltl.
Yeah.
He's hanging out with Jakob Poeltl, and like he'd be a great bench guy, but not a great starter.
Yes, exactly. So their big men are an issue, which in turn turns into rebounding. Big men is the ultimate issue for them, but rebounding, they're one of the worst rebounding teams in the NBA right now.
Yeah, I mean, their big man rotation, it leaves a lot to be desired, and they play a lot of small ball. Marcus Morris plays a lot of 4 for them. You even see like Paul George sometimes rolling out as like part of the front court with them every once in a while. So like,
and that's weird, man, because you need him shooting, and when you make him go down low, that's really going to start to hurt your team later on.
Yeah, it's a weird thing that they do, kind of like run this super small. They basically like run Zubac and then like 4 guards out there basically, and it's just like that lineup hasn't really worked for them. But their whole like big man rotation just is a little bit scary.
Yeah, because it's basically at this point it's Zubac, and then Ibaka just came back. He had his first game back against the Blazers. And then Hartenstein, who they've been relying on a lot out of Eugene, Oregon, but he murdered the Blazers. And he can be serviceable, but he's another just big, awkward white guy out there that is you hope he plays well, but he probably won't.
Every random white guy kills the Blazers. You guys talked about this. That's every random white. Look at Frank. Best game of his life. Kills the Blazers. I won't get into it. It just happens, dude. It's a bummer.
Going back to Hartenstein, he is, I would say, a meh backup big. There's a reason he's on like his 4th team in 4 years. Yeah. Like the reason he can't find a home or can't find a sticking spot where he can like stick and give, actual serviceable minutes is because he's not really worth keeping around anywhere. So like, getting Ibaka back will be huge for this team. This team, again, we talked about it earlier. It's kind of a lost year, so they're trying to just figure out what else sticks when Kawhi gets back. But if they could, stay this hot, if Paul George can keep playing like this, this is showing the Clippers that like we are good and great with Kawhi, but Paul George is at his best when he's the number 1.
100%. He always has been. Yep. He's always has been the best when he is the number 1 guy, and he's going to get to show it this year. They might even be good enough to where Kawhi might want to play at the end of the season. We'll see.
And then you'll see Pandemic P reemerge.
Yeah, then he'll play
Pandemic P.
Paul George gets the whole year to be himself and just ball out, win MVP. Kawhi comes back and he just sucks in the playoffs.
Yeah, the story's writing itself.
And I'm here for it. I can't wait.
All right, let's move on to our next team, which is in 5th place, the 7-4 Dallas Mavericks. One of the weirdest teams in the NBA. They have played 4 above 500 teams and got blown out by all of them, but they've beaten the teams they're supposed to beat.
Hey, that's important.
All right. So the Dallas Mavs, the team is Luka, right? Like you go and you live and die by Luka.
The Celtics game is the prime example. Luka with the
poor Celtics, man. Poor Celtics.
So even when they're close, they can't win.
So with that shot, Luka, that was his 4th buzzer beating game-winning shot in his career. That ties him for like 3rd all time already. Which is wild.
That is a clutch motherfucker.
That is wild.
He is a clutch dude.
Dame was like 2nd, I think. There was one guy who had more. I can't remember who, but it was
Dame's got a lot of
Dame
them.
Has 8.
Dame has a lot of them. Dame has like a lot of like close, like the buzzer didn't go off.
Yeah.
Like closing kind of get shots. But the Mavs' biggest weakness, I'm going to take this for you, Ethan, because I know you don't want to talk about it.
We have a lot of weaknesses.
The biggest weakness is 3-point shooting as a whole, as a unit. They shoot 32% from three, which is
Ooh.
good enough for 26 in the NBA.
And I think we take like the third or fourth most.
Yeah, you take
we
a
huck
lot.
a lot of them. And we don't make a lot.
What?
Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
dude, I
it's
didn't know
not
that.
good.
For a team that was, you take the 14th most.
Oh, that was down. Then we
Yeah.
were third most before our last game. That must have tanked.
They realized they need to start shooting some mid range.
Yeah.
But for a team that was an all-time great offensive unit 2 years ago, and now you can't make a three as a group, it's hard to win games without making threes in today's NBA. Like you've got to be a good 3-point shooting team. And it's the guys outside of Luka that got to step up.
I mean, Luka himself is struggling. He's shooting below 30%. I mean, if you're in the high 20s as a Mavs in terms of 3-point shooting, you're above average for the Mavericks.
So
If you can scrap together and get to like 29%, that's good. We love you. But there's guys like Sterling Brown has made like 1 3 all year. And
He's supposed to be a 3-point
He was
shooter.
top 20 in the entire league last year in terms of percentage. And he's like shooting 9%. Luka shooting, in that high 20s. Kristaps in that mid to low 20s. Dorian is at like 17%. So there's guys that are just like taking it, because you also have guys like Jalen Brunson who's shooting like 45%, and Tim Hardaway Jr. is shooting in that high 30s, low 40s area. So you've got some guys that are shooting well. Frank Ntilikina is shooting all right, which is surprising. But like your big crux, the big three that need to step up are Luka, Reggie Bullock, who's shooting in that low 20s, and Dorian. If those three can figure out a way to get to league average, we'll be fine. My big thing here is like, these guys are all 40% 3-point shooters. Like
that are not shooting 40%.
They can't do that all year, right?
You'd hope. You'd hope. One can hope, but you never know with the trends right now. But yeah, that is the issue for the Mavs.
Yes, I would say that there have been a lot of talk. It's not just from the Mavs, but from a lot of teams about the new ball and that being
the ball
shooting.
The ball.
So I think it's a bit of a cop out. Tim Hardaway Jr. was blaming the ball, and I was like, dude, just you get paid $20 million a year now to shoot a ball. I don't care if it's a rock, put it in the net.
You should be able to play with a YMCA ball and still be able to make it every single time. You're a professional.
Remember those like orange, or not the orange, like red bouncy balls that we used to have at like
like a
middle school,
yeah.
like kickball. You should be able to shoot that.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter.
I mean, one thing I will say about the Mavericks is their defense looks better. Like
could look worse. So
yeah,
let's start there.
They're 14th right now, and that's really not that bad considering like where they are right now with shooting. Their defense is kind of the bright spot I see, where they could really, if they figure out shooting, they could be a scary team in the West.
I worked the Mavericks game last night, and in Jason Kidd's post-game press conference, he said like, and this was after a loss. We lost to the
he tried to block it out. You see that?
Bulls. We lost to the Bulls.
Yes, he did.
We lost to the Bulls last night. But he was like, yeah, if our defense wasn't good, I think we might have one win, because it's not our offense that's carrying us. And I was like, all right, at least he gets it. At least he understands.
He knows. He's there.
He also called Luka aggressivly average to start the year, which I don't think Luka appreciated. But that we're just gonna move on here. Next
That's the
team,
best thing I've ever heard.
we are into our top 4. So these top 4 teams are probably gonna have a hard time coming up with something bad to say about them. But the next team would be the Denver Nuggets. They are 7-4, good for 4th in the Western Conference. They're on a 3-game winning streak. Made headlines from Jokic,
Fight Club
out of Marcus
Love
Morris.
that. Yeah.
The Morris twins had it coming. I have no sympathy. I'm only bummed he wasn't unconscious. No, I'm just kidding. That's terrible. But anyways, the Nuggets, their biggest problem, their biggest issue in my mind, we talked about it earlier, is Michael Porter Jr. He's hurt. They just paid him. So they're now entering salary cap potential hell, because you have a guy on a max who may or may not be playing, for you anytime soon. He's out indefinitely, but also when he was playing, he wasn't playing very well. He was very bad to start the year.
Yeah, your weakness is the entire Michael Porter Jr. experience. Everything that's entailed in it.
It's failing. Yeah,
it's
dude.
failing.
I mean, look at the frustration you can see, because Michael Porter wasn't doing well, but then, I mean, let's be real. Jokic didn't get hit that hard, and he was like, you know what? I'm gonna really, really hurt this guy. And then he hit him. So you can see there's a little weird frustration there that you can kind of see that their team they're good still. and they're struggling like at certain aspects of their team, but they get really frustrated. And Jokic has a temper problem. Like, he cries a lot. I'm gonna be real. He cries at the
European.
refs.
It happens.
He's
It
a
happens.
European star. Yeah.
He's a European
And-
side.
and
As a
that's
fan of a
what-
European guy, it happens.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy is you see him be as good as he is, and he's the slowest, most unfun person to watch that makes everything. And I can't stand watching him because I think he's super boring. Like you guys talked about Tim Duncan. I think it's the same way. I think he's super boring to watch.
I was just about to say he's like the modern version of Tim Duncan, where
Yeah.
he's not necessarily super fundamental, but he's just so boring and plotting and just
So
kind of
boring.
My king.
blots around everywhere. And then he just kind of like will either do this little like weird push hook. It's not like a hook shot, but it's a little like type
I hate
thing.
it.
And it goes
hate
in
it so
every
much.
time. But anyways, back to Michael Porter Jr. Last year, he averaged 19 points a game. Through the 9 games he's played so far this year, he's averaging 9.9. Last year, he
Oof.
shot 54% from the field. He's shooting 35% right now. Last year, he shot 45% from 3. I'll round up again. He's shooting 21% from the field or from 3 right now.
Oh my God.
So
Wow.
when he was playing, he was, I don't even think bad's the right word, awful, horrendous, putrid,
Horrible.
whatever you want to say.
Wow.
He was terrible. And now he's out indefinitely after getting the giant max extension. If I'm a Nuggets fan, I'm a little worried because you hitched your franchise to this wagon of Michael Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, and Jamal Murray. You say, we are good enough by giving Michael Porter Jr. that max. You're saying we are good enough to win a championship with these 3. And right now, I'm not sure.
It's not looking like
I'm not
it.
sure. If I'm a Nuggets fan, I'm a little worried.
Yeah, I mean, everything from being kind of a weird guy and having some weird takes and having some weird interviews, which he's shown over the course of the year, is kind of Kyrie-like in that way. So he's got a weird personality.
Yeah.
He has back problems. You've now given him the official max, and then he played bad, and then he got injured. Every single piece to this puzzle is looking really, really bad for the Nuggets.
Yeah. But they are 4th.
But they're 4th.
But they're 4th.
They still got Jokic, and they'll still make the playoffs.
They'll
and
be
still
fine.
They're just holding out for Murray to get back now.
Yeah, absolutely. But they will. Jokic will have to go into overtime to keep this team afloat without Murray and Porter Jr. Let's move on to the third team in the Western Conference, the 7-3 Suns. They started super slow, but are winners of 6 straight. And they basically started about us. They were on our Panic Meter podcast. We were worried about the Suns. Not anymore. They're fine.
I
You
disagree.
saw them
I
up
hate
close and personal last night, Anthony.
Let's not forget they lost by 30 to the Blazers. Let's not forget that. Anyway, so looking at
That's
the
right.
Suns, I think
Can't believe
it's
twice.
really, it's kind of like you said, the top couple teams, now that they've shown how good they really are, it's kind of hard to find and pick something that they're actually not very good at. And watching them in person, they have the most fun of any team I've ever seen. Like, they're all really young, they have fun, and they play around. But during the game, I saw something that kind of threw me off that I didn't know about them. They get frustrated a lot, and they argue with more calls than, not Draymond Green, they're not that bad, but pretty close to like that level where
That's the Chris
it's
Paul
not just
effect.
it's not just one person. Devin Booker, he played bad. It took Frank Kaminsky getting 31 to beat a team that cannot win on the road. And Devin Booker played bad. Chris Paul was a bright light. He usually is, but once again, he's old and he could get injured. But it's the frustration because they're not always shooting great, and they're having to kind of step away from threes. Like Cam Johnson, who is a great shooter, was struggling last night, and then they're like, man, who do we rely on? Who do we rely on? Luckily, they do have a bench who can step in. They're also going to have some injury problems if Ayton stays down. And if Ayton goes in and out, then they will have some injury problems here in the future.
They will need a backup big. That roster needs another big, because if Ayton goes down with Saric out with his ACL, you basically are relying on Frank Kaminsky
And
JaVale McGee. That team,
That was what they had last night. Was JaVale started and Frank came off the bench to the tune of 31 points.
you need another big there. You need another big to just kind of help fill out that roster, because Saric isn't playing at all this year. Ayton has had his injury problems in the past, but is also dealing with this whole contract situation. I could see a holdout eventually starting to loom its ugly head there. So if I'm the Suns, I am looking for another big to add to this roster.
And they've already given up on Jalen Smith, their lottery pick, from 2 years ago, they did not give him the extension, or they didn't even match for his restricted free agency. So they have
They didn't
Which
give
I
him the
was really
qualifying.
surprised
They
about.
did not give him the qualifying offer. They have zero interest in bringing him back at all.
Interesting.
It's so surprising to me because I thought he looked good, obviously, coming into the NBA. I mean,
Yeah, coming
it
out of
happened.
Maryland. Yeah, he looked
Yeah.
like he had Ibaka type stuff. He's a
He
good
had the
shot blocker
goggles.
and shooter, but yeah, he's got the goggles.
He's got
But
the
yeah,
goggles.
they've
You
already
can't be
given up
bad
on
with
him.
goggles.
Yeah. Well, Suns.
The Suns, good old
The
Suns.
Suns.
Good old Suns. They're 7-3. There's
Back
not
to
a lot to
third.
say about these last teams here just because they're really good. And there won't be a lot to say about this next team, which would be the Utah Jazz. They are
Yeah.
8-3 and winners of 1 in a row, which is awesome. Go Jazz. They're good for second in the Western Conference.
Okay, so you can always find something to be negative about, Ethan. You can always find something to be negative about, even when your team is, what are they, 8-2 or 8-3? Okay, so the Utah Jazz, the thing that they struggle with the most as a collective unit is ball movement. They are last place in assists in the NBA.
Really?
They don't need them.
They don't.
They don't need them.
Apparently, they don't need them. The other thing I'm going to throw out there that is a stressor if I was a Jazz fan is Clarkson has totally come back down to earth. He's shooting really bad
Oh, yeah.
numbers. He's not looking like a 6 man of the year candidate at all right now. But as a team that relies on just individuals like going at it and scoring on them by themselves, you need Clarkson to step up a little bit. But yes, ball movement is the biggest issue for the Utah Jazz.
Well, they don't really have they have Mike Conley, who's a great point guard.
Yep.
But Conley, I would say, is more of a scoring point guard than a facilitating point guard.
Yeah.
They have Mitchell, who is good at getting buckets for himself, but not necessarily for others. And then you have shooters in Bohan, and then you have Royce O'Neal, and then Gobert is not going to get any assists. And then off your bench, you have Clarkson, who's basically, if he's passing it to the hoop.
Yeah.
And then you have,
Whiteside, who doesn't even know what a pass looks like.
and then you have Jingles, who
Doesn't even
might
want
be
to.
the best passer on their roster.
Mhm.
Comes off your bench and is the jingle all the way.
I
Joe
love
Ingles,
that, man. I
who
love
is
that, man.
a great player, but honestly, probably as best as your third best passer on the team, not your best.
Yeah.
That
but,
being said, this team is 8-3.
but they're 8-3. They're really good. They shoot really well, play great defense. I think that they filled the holes in their bench unit from last year where they moved on from Favors, brought in Whiteside, who like mimics what Gobert does.
It's
on the
Gobert
bench.
light.
Yeah, he's Gobert light. And then they brought in Rudy Gay. They brought in Eric Pascal, who's been playing a lot of minutes, who basically has come in and replaced George Niang. They have like a real big time bench now, even more so than last year. So I like what they got going on.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say about the Jazz. I do think that their lack of assists is something to keep an eye on, but that's only if they start losing. If
They're also first in rebounding,
Yeah.
which is something to be said. Like they don't need to pass when Gobert goes cool, and then just kind of lays it up. He's like, and there's 2 more.
Yeah,
Whiteside does the same thing. He blocks and gets rebounds. He's bad at everything else. So I mean,
at least they're consistent,
So what I'm learning is all I got to do is get really, really good at one thing, maybe 2, and I can make the NBA.
That's the key.
That's the key.
you got to grow a few inches, I'm sure, but you're good. You got it.
just a handful here or there.
Just a handful.
All right. Well, let's move on to our last team. This one's a tough one because I don't know what you say about the 10-1 Golden State Warriors, winners of 6 straight. We were worried about them for a little bit at the beginning of the year. Like, we don't know how good they're going to be. They might come back down to earth, but Clay is waiting in the wings to come back. We're probably around a month and a half away from seeing Clay play. They're 10-1. Steph is playing about as good as you could have hoped, and they're number 1 in the West.
All right. I'm going to hit you with multiple weaknesses.
Okay, here we go. These are going to be ridiculous.
We're going to call this the Mitch is a Debbie Downer podcast.
All right.
I love it. Love it.
All right. So to start off, the Warriors have had weak competition. They have not necessarily had a very marquee win on the season so far. It's been I think I saw that their strength of schedule so far this season is 25th. So they've played some of the easier teams in the West. The other thing that I would talk about is when Clay comes back, how are your rotations going to look? Some of the guys, some of your role players right now are really stepping up big time. Damian Lee has been awesome. Jordan Poole has been awesome. A lot of these guys, your screen's black.
I know. I just put my phone
Oh,
down.
I thought you were trying to show
No,
prove
I
to me
just-
that the Warriors have played some teams.
I just put my phone down on the table.
I honestly thought that's exactly what he was doing, and I was like,
No,
oh, wait.
well, there was a
Wait.
cord here. I was just putting my.
I thought you were proving a point to me.
Well,
Anyways.
we'll get there.
But the actions, and so the Clay thing, how do your rotations look? How do your role players play when you have your new star is going to get a bunch of his own shots up?
Right.
But the one thing that I'm actually going to say is like their real weakness right now is they turn the ball over 16 times per game. They're the 23rd worst team in the NBA when it comes to turnovers. Obviously, it hasn't affected them yet. They're winning, they're 10-1 right now. But when you get into the playoffs, you need to be able to hold on to the ball. You can't just give away possessions.
Yeah, and that's something that will come with adding another veteran to the roster like Clay. Bringing him into the fold will help keep down those turnovers. He's a guy that scores a lot without necessarily doing much, so he doesn't need to turn the ball over. That is something where I've seen Draymond kind of struggle with this year is he's playmaking, he's playing good defense, he's passing the ball, but he's had more turnovers than normal this year. So I'm sure Draymond will clean that up. Let's be honest. And then Steph has been turnover prone his whole career.
Yeah.
I mean, you live and die with Steph. He will, and don't get me wrong, the Warriors live a lot more than die, but he's the type of guy that will make 10 threes and have no turnovers, or he'll make no threes and have 8 turnovers. And that's just kind of how he operates. Now, the first one happens way more than the latter, but it is something that is going to happen with the personnel that they have on their team. That being said, they are 10-1, and all is happiness in Golden State right now, or in San Francisco. Everything's happy over there.
And you're adding an all-time player in Klay Thompson at some point throughout this season.
Yeah, probably the second, maybe third, maybe fourth best shooter in the history of the NBA to your roster. Won't hurt you. I can promise you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is something to be said, though. Look at what happened to Memphis when they were clicking on all cylinders and they brought back Triple J. They struggled mightily because, like he said, it messes up your whole rotation. And when Clay comes back, Steph dropped a 50 burger already. So imagine Clay comes back. He's not going to touch the ball as much again. And now with the other role players, a lot of these guys didn't play with the Golden State Warriors of old. And Draymond's not going to shoot. That dude doesn't even want to think about shooting a basketball. He just wants to give it to somebody else or turn the ball over and play defense. That's it. So
yeah,
he just wants to give it to somebody.
He's
It doesn't matter.
that is giving it. Yeah,
Wearing.
absolutely. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what colors you're wearing. I'll just give it to whoever.
But 10-1, I just don't see them losing to anyone right now. The way they're playing, they look like the Warriors. They look like how the Warriors should be, and it is terrifying.
Scary.
They look like early Warriors. This is pre Kevin Durant. This is pre crazy run that they went on. They just look like the Warriors before they popped. But that exhausts our list. That exhausts the Western Conference. We went through each team and talked about their biggest weaknesses to start the year. Super fun to be on another podcast with you, Mitch. Anthony, thank you for joining us. Welcome to Team Morale. Hopefully we'll have you on for many more podcasts to come.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Jack Daniels here with us, a second iteration of a Jack Daniels from Lynchburg, Tennessee. Super fun to have that. We didn't rank it.
Oh, okay.
Boy, we got to rank this thing.
All right. So
real quick.
1 out of 10, Anthony. You got to rank it. I'll go first. Give you guys a little time to think about it. Let me get a little sip here.
Oh my God. Saved by the bell.
Good thought. Good thought. We almost missed it. I'm going to give it a 7.5. It's your very standard average whiskey.
Go for it, Anthony.
I'm going to go off the Ethan scale. I'm going to go a little more down to earth. Scale. Yeah, I'm going to go. It's like I love it, but it's really like a 6.5. It's right in that middle ground where, it's cheap, but it's delicious. And there is so many more better whiskey. Even Jack Daniels has better versions of this whiskey itself. So I'm going to say it's a 6.5. I love it because it's cheap and it'll get the job done pretty quickly and it mixes with everything. So
true.
I have nostalgia entering the ring here.
Okay.
And I love this whiskey. I'm going to give it an 8.0. An 8.0. An 8.0 for this whiskey. It is a very good whiskey. I really like it. A little bit more muted in terms of flavor, but it's also got a lot of punch to it. Super fun whiskey. And what a weird way to end the podcast, but there we go. There's our last minute rankings because we forgot. Have a good week, everybody. We'll be back with you guys next week. We got a lot more fun stuff brewing over at Team Morale. Next week, we'll be back with our Eastern Conference biggest problems because I guess we're negative here now at Team Morale. But have a good week, everybody, and cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.